The story begins with the arrival of the Vorath, a powerful and relentless alien empire on the edge of human space. For centuries, the Vorath have expanded their dominion across the galaxy, conquering countless worlds and subjugating entire civilizations. With advanced technology, a vast military, and a brutal philosophy of domination, they have become a feared and respected force across the stars. The Vorath's mentality is one of superiority. They believe that the galaxy's resources should be controlled by the strongest, and they view weaker species as obstacles to be erased or enslaved. The Vorath's leaders, known as the High Council, have decided that it is time to expand further into uncharted territories. Earth, a primitive but rapidly advancing species, stands in their way. The High Council deems humanity's growing technological capabilities to be a threat, and their desire for conquest leads them to target Earth as their next conquest. They believe that humanity, though not as advanced as some of the other races they have conquered, will be an easy target. The Vorath are convinced that the primitive nature of humanity and their lack of sophisticated intergalactic military power will make them an easy mark. The Earth Defense Forces, however, are far from helpless. While they do not possess the advanced technology or massive fleets of the Vorath, humanity has a unique advantage: its people's resilience and creativity. Over the years, humans have faced many challenges: war, environmental collapse, and civil unrest. Despite these struggles, humanity has always managed to find a way to adapt, survive, and even overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. This survival instinct becomes crucial in the face of the Vorath invasion. The first wave of the Vorath assault is swift and overwhelming. Using their superior fleets, they bombard Earth's defenses and quickly seize control of several key military and government installations. Major cities fall under Vorath occupation, and humanity's military forces are forced to retreat, unable to mount an effective counterattack. For a time, it seems as though Earth's fate is sealed. The Vorath's powerful weaponry, including advanced energy shields and devastating particle beam technology, give them a huge advantage, and it looks like they will easily dominate Earth as they have done to countless other worlds. However, even in the face of overwhelming odds, the human spirit is not so easily broken. What the Vorath did not anticipate was the sheer determination and unpredictability of humanity's military tactics. When the Vorath begin their assault, humanity's forces fall back to the cities and hideouts, regrouping and preparing for guerrilla warfare. The Vorath, used to dominating entire worlds with ease, are caught off guard by the effectiveness of the human resistance. As the Vorath continue to advance, human fighters engage in small, tactical skirmishes, using the urban landscape to their advantage. Buildings become fortresses, and Earth's military uses every tool at its disposal to create traps and ambushes for the invaders. What makes humanity so dangerous in the eyes of the Vorath is not their technological prowess, but their relentless ingenuity. The Vorath have never encountered a species willing to fight back with such sheer unpredictability. Earth's military uses everything from improvised explosives to ancient military strategies, employing guerrilla tactics that have worked for centuries. Even though humanity is outmatched technologically, their ability to adapt and strike when least expected turns the tide in several key engagements. As the Vorath forces continue to advance, they realize that Earth is not the easy conquest they had imagined. The Vorath, accustomed to quelling resistance through overwhelming firepower, find themselves increasingly frustrated by humanity's dogged persistence. Despite their technological superiority, the Vorath realize they cannot simply annihilate humanity's spirit. This recognition slowly begins to seep into the minds of the Vorath High Council. They had initially believed that Earth would fall quickly and without resistance, but now they are faced with a problem they had not anticipated. Humanity refuses to surrender, and their military forces continue to fight back. albeit with limited resources. In response, the Vorath High Council convenes to discuss their next move. As they plan their strategy to crush humanity once and for all, they begin to consider an alternative option: diplomacy. Realizing that an all-out military victory may be more costly and drawn out than anticipated, some members of the High Council suggest that negotiating with humanity might be a quicker way to secure Earth's submission. After all, if the Vorath can show humanity the full extent of their power, surely the humans will recognize their futility and accept subjugation. The Council agrees to send a diplomatic envoy to Earth, intending to offer peace through surrender. Though the underlying threat of continued invasion looms large, this is where General Rachel Carter, a seasoned human diplomat and military strategist, enters the story. Though Earth's military continues to fight in the shadows, Carter understands that the time for outright war may soon end. As the Vorath prepare to send their diplomats, Carter prepares for a high-stakes meeting, one that could change the future of humanity forever. In this first part, the tension builds as the Vorath invade, and Earth's military faces impossible odds. The stage is set for a dramatic confrontation, with humanity's survival hanging in the balance, forcing both sides to reconsider their approach to the conflict. After the initial waves of battle, the Vorath High Council begins to realize that Earth's resistance is not easily quelled. Despite their advanced technology and overwhelming military might, humanity's resilience, creativity, and guerrilla warfare tactics force the Vorath to reconsider their approach. Instead of continuing a costly and drawn-out war, some factions within the Vorath leadership begin to entertain the idea of negotiation. The belief that humanity could be subjugated without much effort starts to fade, replaced by a creeping doubt about the true capabilities of this species. In response to the growing uncertainty, the Vorath decide to initiate a diplomatic mission. The High Council sends a delegation to Earth to offer a treaty that would allow for peaceful submission. The idea is simple. The Vorath will present humanity with an ultimatum: surrender now or face total annihilation. The Vorath, accustomed to dominating other civilizations with little resistance, expect humanity to cower before their superior power. However, this belief stems from a deep misunderstanding of the human spirit. The diplomatic envoy, led by an imposing Vorath ambassador named Zalthor, arrives on Earth with a fleet of warships hovering ominously in orbit. Their presence is a clear reminder of the overwhelming power at their disposal, and they expect to intimidate humanity into compliance. The Vorath are confident that the fear of further destruction will be enough to force humanity into submission. However, this tactic has worked on countless worlds before, and they have little reason to believe that Earth will be any different. Humanity, meanwhile, is far from intimidated. Earth's leadership, though battered and bruised, understands the stakes of this negotiation. General Rachel Carter, who has been leading Earth's resistance efforts, is chosen as the key diplomat to represent humanity in the peace talks. Carter, a seasoned strategist and negotiator, knows that this moment will define the future of the human race. While her military forces continue to fight in the shadows, Carter knows that diplomacy is their best chance for survival. She's no stranger to the art of negotiation, but facing an alien empire that has razed entire civilizations is a challenge unlike any other. The meeting takes place in a grand, heavily secured diplomatic chamber, with both the Vorath delegation and human representatives present. The Vorath, arrogant and self-assured, immediately begin their demands. Zalthor, the Vorath ambassador, begins by declaring the superiority of the Vorath Empire, asserting that humanity's resistance is futile and that Earth's destruction is inevitable unless they accept terms of surrender. The Vorath's tone is dismissive, as if the humans are nothing more than insects beneath their feet. Zalthor makes it clear that the Vorath do not negotiate. They offer peace only on their terms. Carter, however, is not intimidated. She recognizes the need to buy time and to demonstrate humanity's strength, but she also knows that outright Defiance could lead to devastating consequences. Instead of backing down, she uses a different tactic. She proposes an exchange of information. Carter offers the Vorath a peace offering, a compilation of Earth's war footage. The offer is unexpected, but Carter knows that the Vorath, despite their arrogance, are deeply curious about humanity. She believes that showing them the history of humanity's battles will open their eyes to something they could never have anticipated: human resolve, creativity, and unyielding willpower. Zalthor and the Vorath delegation are initially skeptical of the idea. After all, what could a few historical recordings of human wars possibly offer that could change the course of the invasion? The Vorath are used to conquering worlds through sheer force, and they see no need for such petty displays of history. However, Carter presses on, framing it as a gesture of goodwill, a means of demonstrating that humanity has much more to offer than just military resistance. Reluctantly, the Vorath agree to watch the footage, though they do so with little expectation that it will change their perception of humanity. The room is dimmed, and the footage begins to play. What starts as a quiet, almost academic presentation soon becomes an intense and shocking display of human warfare across centuries. The footage moves through different eras: ancient wars, world wars, guerrilla conflicts, and modern combat. The Vorath watch as human soldiers, using little more than rudimentary technology compared to the alien forces, wage brutal wars of attrition. The Vorath see the same relentless spirit in each battle, a refusal to yield, a determination to fight on against all odds. At first, the Vorath view the footage with skepticism. However, as the minutes pass and the footage moves into the modern era, they begin to sense something unexpected, something they did not anticipate. There is a raw, unpredictable energy to humanity's combat tactics. Humans, despite their limited resources and inferior technology, manage to outthink, outlast, and, on occasion, outfight technologically superior foes. The Vorath watch as humanity adapts in real time, using improvisation and creative strategies to turn the tide of seemingly hopeless conflicts. They witness moments of humanity's ingenuity, like the use of guerrilla tactics, unconventional weapons, and sheer willpower to overcome overwhelming forces. The most shocking part of the footage, however, is the humans' ability to thrive under the most extreme conditions. The Vorath watch as human soldiers face seemingly impossible odds against superior firepower, vast numbers, and oppressive environments, and yet they do not break. The sheer tenacity of the human spirit in battle, the refusal to accept defeat, becomes undeniable. The Vorath High Council, who once believed that humanity was a primitive species ready to fall before their might, now begins to realize that they may have underestimated their enemy. As the footage ends, there is an uneasy silence in the room. Zalthor and his delegation are visibly shaken, no longer dismissive of the humans in front of them. The seeds of doubt have been planted. For the first time, the Vorath begin to question whether conquering Earth is as simple as they once believed. This meeting marks a turning point. The Vorath, who came with the expectation of overwhelming force, are now forced to reconsider their assumptions about humanity. The diplomatic dialogue is no longer about submission. It is now a conversation about survival. The stage is set for the real negotiation to begin, but one thing is certain: humanity has made an impression that will change the course of the invasion forever. As the diplomatic meeting continues, the Vorath delegation is left stunned and unnerved by the footage of humanity's battle history. The compilation of human wars, showcasing the raw power of human ingenuity and the unrelenting will to survive, has begun to chip away at the Vorath's previously unshakable belief in their own superiority. The unspoken question now hangs in the air. Can the Vorath truly conquer a species capable of such resilience and creativity? The footage, which was initially intended as a gesture of goodwill, has taken on a deeper significance. For the first time, the Vorath are forced to confront a side of humanity they never expected, an unpredictable, relentless force of nature. As they sit in stunned silence, the Vorath see scenes from Earth's tumultuous history, each one more surprising and unsettling than the last. The humans' ability to fight back against seemingly insurmountable odds becomes impossible to ignore. The footage begins with the earliest recorded wars on Earth. The Vorath see primitive human tribes fighting for survival, using nothing but basic weapons and cunning strategies. While these battles are crude by their standards, the Vorath begin to notice something unusual. Even in these early wars, humans show an extraordinary ability to adapt to their environment, use the terrain to their advantage, and exploit weaknesses in their enemies. The Vorath have fought many species, but they've never encountered one that displays such resourcefulness from the very beginning. As the footage progresses, it moves into more modern conflicts. The Vorath watch in disbelief as they see Earth's wars escalate into global conflicts, particularly the world wars of the 20th century. In these wars, the human fighting spirit becomes even more pronounced. Despite facing overwhelming technological superiority from their enemies, humans continue to find ways to fight back with brutal efficiency. The Vorath see soldiers and civilians alike using guerrilla tactics, ambushes, and surprise attacks to inflict significant damage on far larger, more technologically advanced armies. The footage shows human ingenuity in every corner of the battlefield: improvised explosives, unconventional weaponry, and the strategic use of limited resources. What strikes the Vorath the most is the pattern they observe in the human spirit. Every time it seems humanity is on the brink of defeat, they find a way to turn the tide. The Vorath watch as, in the darkest hours of human history, when the forces arrayed against them are insurmountable, the humans do not surrender. Instead, they fight on, adapt, and use their enemies' underestimation of them as a weapon. The Vorath are astounded to see humans exploit their own weaknesses and the weaknesses of their enemies, turning what should have been certain defeat into unexpected victories. The most harrowing footage, however, is the modern-day conflicts. The Vorath watch as humanity fights against technologically superior forces, using limited resources, and still manages to achieve incredible feats. They witness moments where human forces, armed with nothing more than basic rifles and armor, manage to defeat opponents with far superior weaponry. They see how humans, even when faced with impossible odds, continue to fight for the survival of their species. They see how humans use the very same technology that the Vorath rely on against them, hacking their systems, turning their weapons against them, and exploiting even the smallest vulnerability in their advanced machinery. One particular scene strikes fear into the Vorath: the footage of human soldiers trapped behind enemy lines, fighting their way out against all odds. It's a scene that seems almost designed to mock the Vorath's assumptions about humanity. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, still manage to outsmart their enemies and escape with their lives. The Vorath cannot comprehend how a species so seemingly weak can show such perseverance and strategic brilliance. Throughout the footage, there is a common thread: humanity's capacity to learn from defeat. Each loss fuels a deeper understanding of how to win, and each victory is an opportunity to adapt and improve. The Vorath, who have never encountered such a dynamic and adaptable species, begin to question their earlier assessment of humanity as a primitive, inferior race. What they are seeing is not the story of a weak species struggling to survive. It is the story of a species that thrives on adversity, constantly evolving to meet any challenge head-on. As the footage ends, the room is heavy with silence. The Vorath are no longer looking at humanity as they once did, as a species to be conquered easily. Instead, they are now looking at humanity as a formidable force, capable of turning any situation to its advantage. The Vorath are faced with a stark reality. They have underestimated humanity, and the consequences of that mistake could be dire. The silence is finally broken by Zalthor, the Vorath ambassador, who speaks with a tone of grudging respect. He acknowledges, albeit reluctantly, that the footage has shown him and his delegation a side of humanity they did not expect. The Vorath now understand that humanity's strength lies not in its technological prowess alone, but in its adaptability, cunning, and unyielding spirit. Zalthor hints that perhaps the Vorath need to reconsider their plans for Earth. What they once saw as a simple conquest is now, in their eyes, a battle against an enemy they may not be able to defeat. The shift in the Vorath's perception is palpable. They came to Earth believing they would crush the human spirit with a single display of their power. Instead, they leave the meeting with a newfound respect for humanity's resilience and the dawning realization that their initial assumption of easy victory was dangerously flawed. The diplomatic tension has shifted. The Vorath are now faced with an uncomfortable truth. They may have to negotiate terms with humanity on equal footing, rather than imposing their will upon them. This moment marks a critical turning point. The Vorath, once so sure of their superiority, are now forced to confront the uncomfortable reality that they may be outmatched by a species they underestimated. The human battle archives have turned the tide of the invasion, and the Vorath must now reckon with the undeniable truth. Humanity is not an easy target, and it will not be conquered without a fight. Following the shocking revelation provided by the human battle archives, the Vorath High Council is thrown into disarray. What they had initially believed to be a swift and straightforward invasion of Earth has now become an uncertain and fraught dilemma. The footage has shown them a side of humanity they never anticipated, a species capable of creativity, resilience, and, most concerning of all, the ability to turn the tide of war through sheer determination. The Vorath, once confident in their ability to crush humanity, now face an enemy that might not be so easily subdued. In the aftermath of the diplomatic meeting, the Vorath leaders retreat to their war room to reassess their position. A faction of the High Council, particularly the more pragmatic members, urges caution. They argue that humanity's resilience, as displayed in the archives, could result in significant losses for the Vorath if they continue their invasion. If the conflict drags on, the Vorath risk not only suffering casualties, but also losing valuable resources and time in a protracted war. The diplomatic channels, though initially viewed as a means of intimidation, now seem to offer a potential escape from what could become a quagmire. Despite the growing realization that Earth is not an easy target, other members of the High Council remain adamant. Their pride and long-standing belief in Vorath superiority make them reluctant to back down. They argue that Earth, despite its unexpected tenacity, is still a primitive species that cannot withstand the full force of the Vorath war machine. But as the debate intensifies, the pragmatic faction gains ground, and the High Council ultimately decides that the time has come to offer humanity a formal surrender. The surrender offer, however, is not born out of goodwill. The Vorath propose a stark and one-sided peace treaty, one that offers Earth's leaders a false sense of agency, while still ensuring the Vorath maintain control. The terms of the treaty are clear. Humanity must acknowledge the Vorath as their overlords and accept the annexation of Earth into the Vorath Empire. In return, humanity's people would be spared from further destruction and allowed to live under Vorath rule. Essentially, they would remain alive, but at the mercy of the Vorath. The treaty is designed to leave humanity with no room for negotiation, except the terms, or face total annihilation. Despite the heavy-handed nature of the offer, the Vorath believe that humanity, having seen the overwhelming power of the Vorath fleet and technology, will be quick to surrender. They expect that the sheer magnitude of their military strength will force Earth's leaders to capitulate without question. After all, the Vorath have never encountered a species that refused to bend in the face of their might. The terms of the surrender are meant to be a final ultimatum. As the Vorath High Council finalizes the surrender proposal, General Rachel Carter, the human diplomat who had previously led the negotiations, is once again called upon. Carter, though weary from the earlier encounters, understands the gravity of the moment. The Vorath's decision to send a formal surrender offer, however coercive, marks a shift in their approach. They no longer see humanity as an easily crushed enemy. Instead, they now view Earth as a complex and unpredictable challenge that requires a more delicate touch. Carter, along with her team of diplomats and military strategists, knows that this is not just a moment for negotiation. It is a critical test of humanity's will to survive. While the Vorath offer terms that seem like an opportunity for peace, Carter recognizes that accepting the surrender proposal could be a death sentence for humanity's autonomy. The terms of the treaty would strip away any semblance of Earth's sovereignty, forcing humans to live under the thumb of an alien empire. The human delegation, led by Carter, meets with the Vorath envoy again, this time to receive the official surrender proposal. The Vorath delegation presents their terms with a mixture of arrogance and condescension, as if offering peace is a magnanimous gesture. They insist that the human race should be grateful for their continued existence under the Vorath Empire. Earth's leaders, they claim, should see the offer as an opportunity for survival, despite the apparent loss of freedom. Carter listens carefully, her expression stoic as the Vorath ambassador outlines the terms of the treaty. As she processes the proposal, she takes note of the subtle but significant shift in the Vorath's tone. They are no longer speaking from a position of unchallenged power, but from one of cautious respect. They are still imposing their terms, but they are no longer speaking as though humanity is beneath them. They are acknowledging that they face an enemy unlike any other. When Carter responds, her words are measured but deliberate. She acknowledges the force the Vorath possess, but refuses to accept the terms as they are presented. "Humanity will not surrender," she declares firmly. "We will not be ruled by anyone, let alone a race that believes it can conquer us by sheer force. We fight for our right to live, to thrive, and to make our own decisions." Her response sends ripples of tension through the room. The Vorath delegation, who had assumed humanity would bend to their will, is taken aback. The ambassador, though still confident, now hesitates, recognizing the firmness in Carter's resolve. It's clear that humanity is not backing down, not yet and not without a fight. However, Carter also knows that diplomacy is still on the table. While the formal surrender terms are unacceptable, she proposes an alternative, a ceasefire during which the two sides can engage in further discussions. This, she argues, would give both parties time to reassess their positions and perhaps find a more mutually acceptable resolution. Carter's response is a carefully calculated move, one that buys humanity more time and further demonstrates their unwillingness to capitulate. The Vorath are reluctant but intrigued. They had expected a quick and decisive victory, but they are now confronted with a human enemy that refuses to accept defeat. The room is charged with a new energy, one of uncertainty. The Vorath might have come to Earth believing they would impose their will, but now, for the first time, they are faced with the uncomfortable reality that humanity is not so easily subdued. This marks the beginning of a tense and uncertain stalemate. The terms of the surrender are rejected, but the opportunity for a deeper negotiation remains open. The question now is whether the Vorath will continue their campaign of conquest, or whether they will begin to acknowledge that humanity might just be a species worth reckoning with. The delicate balance of power has shifted, and the war is far from over. Following the human rejection of the Vorath's surrender offer, the tension between the two species escalates. The Vorath, now uncertain of their victory, have reluctantly entered into a ceasefire agreement with humanity, allowing both sides a brief window of time to reconsider their strategies. The Vorath, though still confident in their overwhelming power, now find themselves in a precarious position, faced with a species that refuses to yield, despite being outmatched in terms of technology and resources. For the first time, they are forced to confront a very different aspect of humanity that had been hidden from them: human unity, ingenuity, and the sheer determination to survive at all costs. During the ceasefire, the human leadership, led by General Rachel Carter, uses the time to reinforce Earth's defensive capabilities. Behind closed doors, humanity's greatest minds, scientists, engineers, and military strategists, work together to innovate new strategies and technologies. While the Vorath continue to believe they have the upper hand, humanity is quietly preparing for the next stage of the conflict. The ceasefire is a critical moment for humanity to regroup, but it's also an opportunity for them to reveal a hidden strength the Vorath had never anticipated. The Vorath, too, have begun to reevaluate their position. Their fleets remain in orbit, intimidating, but their sense of certainty is beginning to erode. Zalthor, the Vorath ambassador, is caught between his earlier arrogance and the realization that the invasion of Earth may not be the effortless conquest he had imagined. Reports from the Vorath military about human resistance continue to pour in, showing that Earth's forces, though not as technologically advanced, are proving to be a formidable opponent. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, the humans fight with an intensity that confounds the Vorath. The ceasefire is not merely a pause in the conflict, it's a crucial moment where both sides are recalibrating their strategies. The Vorath continue to underestimate humanity, believing that Earth's military strength is the result of desperation rather than true resilience. However, General Carter and her team of strategists are preparing to reveal something that the Vorath would never have expected: a network of human resistance movements that spans the globe, each group operating independently but united under a single cause. This global network, built on trust and shared purpose, is humanity's hidden weapon. As part of their preparation, Carter calls for the reintegration of civilian and military technologies, blending advanced human ingenuity with the resourcefulness of Earth's survivors. Through this collaboration, humanity begins to develop new tactics and weapons that exploit the Vorath's reliance on their advanced technology. While the Vorath fleets rely on their power and superior weapons, humanity has learned how to exploit weaknesses, how to outsmart, outmaneuver, and fight in ways that the Vorath had never considered. In one of the most daring moves, the human resistance successfully hacks into Vorath communication channels, sending false intelligence reports that sow confusion among their ranks. The Vorath begin to distrust their own systems, wondering if their technological superiority is really as invulnerable as they once believed. They realize that despite their overwhelming military advantage, they may be fighting an enemy that understands how to turn their strengths into vulnerabilities. The Vorath fleet, for the first time, experiences a sense of insecurity. The culmination of humanity's hidden strength comes in the form of a surprise attack against a key Vorath supply line. Using the intelligence gathered through their global resistance network, humans managed to disrupt the supply of vital resources to the Vorath fleet. While the Vorath had assumed Earth's limited technology would be no match for their war machine, humanity is proving that their adaptability and strategic creativity are as powerful as any advanced weaponry. The Vorath are now dealing with a force that is not only physically resilient, but also mentally agile. Back in the human war rooms, General Carter watches the results of the attack unfold. The damage done to the Vorath supply lines is significant, and while it's not enough to cripple their fleets entirely, it is a major blow to their confidence. For the first time in the conflict, the Vorath are forced to question whether they can maintain their military dominance, especially when dealing with a species that fights as creatively and resourcefully as humanity. The Vorath, who once thought of their power as absolute, are now grappling with the reality that they are facing an enemy that does not fight conventionally, but rather outwits, outmaneuvers, and adapts. Humanity's hidden strength is no longer a secret. The Vorath now understand that Earth's true power lies not in its technology, but in its unity, creativity, and ability to outthink its enemies. Earth's resistance movements, once thought to be scattered and ineffective, have become an organized and effective fighting force. Every victory, no matter how small, chips away at the Vorath's confidence and shifts the balance of power. In the aftermath of the successful strike against the Vorath supply lines, the human delegation calls for another meeting with the Vorath, this time to discuss the next steps in the ceasefire. General Carter, having gained the upper hand with her brilliant strategies, walks into the meeting with a renewed sense of confidence. She knows that humanity's survival hinges not just on fighting, but on proving that they can be an equal partner in the negotiation, not just a species to be subjugated, but one to be reckoned with. For the Vorath, the meeting will not be the easy victory they once anticipated. They now face a species whose strength lies in its unexpected resilience and cleverness. The true challenge for the Vorath has just begun. Can they accept the reality that they cannot easily crush humanity, or will they continue to cling to their arrogance and misjudgments? The ball is now in their court, but humanity's hidden strength has already shifted the dynamics of the war, and the Vorath are no longer sure of the outcome. The ceasefire between humanity and the Vorath is nearing its end, and the tension is palpable. Humanity, having used this time to regroup, strategize, and expose their hidden strength, has shifted the dynamics of the conflict. The Vorath, who once believed that Earth would fall easily under their might, now find themselves in a precarious position. The human resistance movements, bolstered by creative tactics and global cooperation, have proven to be a far more formidable force than the Vorath could have ever imagined. In the days leading up to the final confrontation, the Vorath High Council is divided. Some members are still confident that the war can be won by overwhelming force, while others, particularly the more pragmatic leaders, now see the wisdom in negotiating a peace. However, the Vorath are still unwilling to fully relinquish their vision of domination. They are caught in a moment of indecision, unsure whether to continue their costly campaign or acknowledge that they may not have the upper hand after all. Meanwhile, General Rachel Carter and her team prepare for the final diplomatic meeting. Humanity is at a crossroads, having endured months of tension and subversion. Carter, aware that this meeting could determine the fate of Earth, enters it with a clear message. Humanity will not be subjugated. They will fight, not only for their survival, but for their future, and for the right to live on their own terms. Earth may have limited resources compared to the Vorath, but they possess something far more powerful, an unbreakable will to survive and a determination to protect their home. As the meeting begins, the Vorath representatives present a new proposal, albeit one that has clearly been influenced by their recent setbacks. Zalthor, the Vorath ambassador, speaks with an air of forced diplomacy, acknowledging the human resilience and the significant toll the Vorath forces have already taken. The terms of the new offer are less harsh than the initial surrender proposal. But still, it is clear that the Vorath intend to impose their rule over Earth, albeit under the guise of peace. The Vorath, in a moment of recognition, offer humanity the chance to coexist under their empire. Earth would retain some autonomy, but it would ultimately fall under Vorath control. Carter listens intently, her mind calculating her response. While the offer seems more conciliatory, it is still unacceptable. Humanity has come too far and fought too hard to accept anything less than total sovereignty. Carter, now speaking with calm resolve, presents her counteroffer. "We do not negotiate our freedom," she declares. "Humanity will never live under the yoke of another species. You can either leave or you can face us on the battlefield, where we will fight to our last breath." The Vorath delegation is stunned. They had expected humanity to be worn down, to accept the terms out of fear or desperation. Instead, they find themselves staring into the eyes of a species that has nothing to lose but its freedom. Carter's words resonate with her team, who stand united behind her, their unwavering determination fueling the negotiation. As the conversation continues, the tension in the room becomes palpable. The Vorath are forced to recognize that their earlier miscalculations, underestimating humanity's resilience, adaptability, and unity, have brought them to a point where they must make a crucial decision. If they continue their aggression, they risk a full-scale war with a species that will not yield. If they concede, they may lose face and control over the galaxy. For the first time, the Vorath are confronted with a choice they never anticipated. Suddenly, the room falls into an eerie silence. Zalthor, the Vorath ambassador, stands up, his face betraying a mixture of frustration and reluctant respect. After a long pause, he speaks. "Perhaps we have underestimated you, humanity, your spirit, your will to survive. It is unlike anything we have encountered before." With a heavy sigh, he delivers the decision that will alter the course of galactic history. "We agree to cease hostilities. Earth will remain free." The moment is electric, as the entire room absorbs the weight of this declaration. The Vorath, once so sure of their dominance, have conceded to humanity. But more than that, they have acknowledged humanity's inherent strength, not in terms of technology or military might, but in the unyielding drive to protect what is theirs. With the cessation of hostilities, the ceasefire officially ends, and a new era begins. The Vorath High Council, though disgraced by their failure to conquer Earth, now recognize humanity as a power to be reckoned with. The humans, who once seemed like an afterthought, have proven that they are not to be underestimated. The battle for Earth may have been won, but the larger struggle for the future of the galaxy remains uncertain. The Vorath leave Earth, but they do so with a newfound respect for the species they had once considered weak. For humanity, the victory is not just in the negotiation, but in the realization that they can stand against the odds and prevail. Earth's survival is secured, not by overwhelming force, but by the strength of its people, who fought together, united in their determination to remain free. The Vorath have learned a hard lesson, that humanity, though seemingly small in the grand scope of the galaxy, is a force that will not be easily extinguished. The stage is now set for the next chapter in humanity's journey, as they continue to prove that their greatest strength lies not in their technology, but in their unbreakable will to survive.